All right. I have a question for all of you. How many of you have walked into a room or been in an event or maybe high school and just kind of felt a little out of place? Like you just didn't quite belong? Yeah. Pretty much everybody at some point, right? Yeah. Me too. Right? In my heart and in my soul, I've always known that I was an intuitive empath, that I knew that I was going to be a teacher by the time I was in second grade. I knew that I was here for a special purpose to help others and to help people come into their own and really live to their potential. But I didn't quite know exactly what that looked like or what that meant for many years. So here's what I know today in hindsight, after many years of this journey. I grew up as an only child in an abusive alcoholic home. I was extremely intelligent. I was reading by the time I was 4 and started kindergarten early. I was always at least 1 to 2 grade levels ahead in my math classes all the way through middle school. And even in high school, I felt a little out of place. But I remember in school as a young girl, like I said, I already told you guys that I was, highly intelligent. We also moved, and I lived in 5 different states by the time I was in 8th grade. Never mind all the different school districts that we lived in until we found a permanent place to live in each of those. And so I remember, as early as 3rd grade, feeling just out of place and didn't belong. I was a teacher's pet. I was typically the new kid. I was typically the youngest kid. And I was a high achiever. Not real good and conducive to making friends right away in every place that I went, right? So I remember, like I said, as early as 3rd grade, walking home to the babysitter's house and the class bully following us and throwing rocks at the back of my head because I was different, And that was just being typically different, right? Just because of the new kid and all of that. Like I said, in high school, I also felt a little out of place. We lived on the wrong side of the tracks, if you will, in Memphis at the time. And my grandmother, God bless, used all of her civil service retirement to put me in the most elite private all-girls school in the rich neighborhood so that I could get an education and opportunities that my family never had. But once again, I'm out of place, right? And I feel different. But despite all of the chaos that I was living in, and despite all the differences, the adults around me would look at me and go, what an incredibly happy, loving, caring, well-mannered, God-filled, bright child. And they weren't wrong. As an only child, I learned how to actually entertain myself, right? And I learned how to cope. I learned how to do that through reading, through sports, through nature. You could often find me outside in the cherry tree outside of our trailer, where I would climb up and I would read a book. And it was a great escape. It was a great way to escape and just create my own world. But not only was it a great escape, it also shut down the intuitive side of me that at a young age I didn't know what to do with. But I was having dreams, I was having knowings, I was experiencing things that I could not explain. And there weren't many adults around me that I could speak to about that or that could help me learn. The first real memory that I have, the first significant memory that I have of this, and a great example to help you understand, was when I was in high school. I remember one night, it was probably my sophomore or junior year of high school. I was talking on the phone to one of my best friends, and I knew she wasn't okay. I could just hear it in her voice. She was sad, she was depressed, she was scared, and she was having a really hard time. And she was a high achiever like me. And I made her promise, just don't do anything until tomorrow, please. I just want to see you tomorrow. And she promised me she wouldn't do anything and that she'd be all right. And I went to bed that night and I laid my head down on my pillow, and I heard, as soon as my head hit the pillow, I heard a scream in my ear. And I sat straight up out of bed because I knew exactly what that was. I knew that she wasn't okay, and I knew that scream was hers. So I made note of the time so that I could find out the next morning what had happened, because here's the thing, there was nothing I could do. I couldn't reach her parents. This is way, way before cell phones, right? I couldn't reach her parents. There was no way that I could drive there. I didn't quite have my full license yet. So there was nothing I could do. All I could do was say a quick prayer, ask God to protect her, and go to sleep. And so I did. And the next morning I woke up and I'm like, what is going on, right? Like, was that real? Was that a dream? And I looked at my clock and I was like, no, that wasn't a dream. And I remembered the time and I heard a voice say, if she's not there by second period, go ahead and ask an adult if they know what's happened. And so I went to school. I got up, did my routine, went to school. And she wasn't there for first period. And she wasn't there for second period. And she indeed did come to school in between our second and third periods during that break that we had. And come to find out, she had been in the hospital all night having her stomach pumped as a result of taking a handful of pills at the exact time that I heard her scream in my ear. Now, I never told her this story to my recollection. It's been a long time ago. And I never really told anyone at school about that story because I was already the outsider. And I didn't want anyone to think that I was crazier than I thought they perceived me to be. Not that they said I was, but that I thought they perceived me to be. So, went on to college, and all I ever wanted to be, y'all, was normal. I just wanted to fit in. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to be considered normal. So I went on to college, and I thought, yes, here it is. I've got a new start, fresh start. This is going to be great. But I struggled. I was in a long-distance relationship with, come to find out, an alcoholic and addict. Didn't know that until I went away to college and spent more time with him. Really struggled with my grades. Was on academic probation. Now remember, high achiever, right? Was on academic probation by the end of my freshman year and just really struggled to fit in. It was really hard for me. It wasn't the academics, it was the social environment. Because everywhere I went, I could feel what people were experiencing and thinking. So I started drinking. And I had to drink and party so much, y'all, so that I could block out all of that intuition. I could block out everything that was happening to me and all those experiences that I had just to be able to fit in. And as a result of my drinking, I wasn't going to graduate from college. And that was a real shock because I was supposed to be the first college graduate of my family, you know? The very first college graduate. And I called my mom to let her know that I wasn't going to be able to make it, that I wasn't going to graduate. And she said, you need to get help. And so I did. And I got a medical withdrawal for addiction. Spring break of my senior year, y'all. Like, really? Seriously? So I got sober and started a whole new life. And it was incredible. I was young, so I didn't really know what to expect, right? Because that's really young. I was 21 years old when I got sober. And I met a new group of friends who understood what it felt like to be different, who understood the alcoholic brain and the chatter and all of that and what I was experiencing. But there was still something missing. They didn't understand the intuitive empath. They didn't understand the sensitivity that I had. They didn't understand what I experienced when I walked into a room and how I could read the energy. As a matter of fact, I had some mentors that would look at me and go, "You are way too damn sensitive. You just need to toughen up if you're going to make it in this world." And you know, on some levels, they weren't wrong. They weren't wrong. But I took that to heart, and I started chasing what I thought was normal and what I saw all of my friends doing. I got the 9 to 5. I started a career. I had, nice apartments. I had the clothes and the shoes and the bags and the car and the whole nine. I chased that. And I was happy for a little while. And I was comfortable because I thought I was normal and safe in that 9 to 5 life. But I couldn't ignore the gifts. I couldn't ignore the calling that was inside. And spiritual teachers started showing up in my life, just randomly. I'd meet them at different events, and they'd go, "We need to talk." And I'm like, wait a minute. And so I started meditating just to quiet my mind. And I started learning everything I could about metaphysics on the side. And I even started doing intuitive readings, and I started doing Reiki sessions and healing sessions on the side as a side hustle. And my soul just soared. And I was like, oh, this is my calling. And it worked for a while. And I really enjoyed my life. I had incredible friends in recovery. I had somewhat long-term sobriety. I was traveling internationally with my 9 to 5 jobs. I was really achieving what I thought the normal success looked like. But there was something inside, again, that wasn't okay. And what happened was, after a series of challenges that started to pop up in my life, whether it was losses, whether it was deaths, whether it was struggling at work to explain to my boss how I knew how to get work done and how I knew that things were going to be okay without a projection, because my intuition told me that this was what I needed to do. You can't really say that in a 9 to 5 corporate world. They look at you like you're a little crazy, right? Because they want proof. They want numbers. I was just successful at what I did because I knew what to do next. So I enjoyed my life. But again, the challenges started to come. And after a series of losses, I started to question whether I could actually really be happy in this world. I started to question what recovery was all about. I started to question whether or not God really had a purpose for me here. And I set my business aside, the side hustle, the spiritual side hustle aside. And as I did that, I started to really reflect on my entire life. And as I did that, I went back and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm tired. I am so tired. And I started really thinking, and I was like, oh my goodness, I grew up in that home and I didn't fit in school, and I was told at 16 that I would never have children because of some physical complications. I didn't fit in high school. I had a series of losses. As a matter of fact, the man that I one day thought that I would marry and my dad both passed away suddenly within 10 months of each other. Just gone, right? I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at the age of 29. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. Family members decided to distance themselves from me. The list can go on, right? I'm not going to sit here and list everything. But as you can tell, I was exhausted. I was tired. The best way I can describe it is I was soul tired. And so I didn't drink. I didn't lose my sobriety. But I did become suicidal. And I had a plan. And I had a plan to go ahead and just end it. And it wasn't out of spite. It wasn't out of anger. It was that I just didn't want to struggle anymore. And I knew that there was something bigger and better on the other side. Now, I didn't want my family members or my friends to think that it was them, so I did write letters. Thank God they were never sent, as I am still standing here. But they were not sent. And the perfectionist in me, right, knew that I had one last business meeting that I needed to go to that afternoon before following through with this plan that I had so that I wouldn't have to be suffering anymore. And I showed up at work, and I showed up for this last business meeting, and thank heavens I was actually working with a sober sister of mine who had also worked in recovery homes and had worked in counseling. And she took one look at me and said, "You're not okay. You are not okay." And I wouldn't tell her what was going on. And so after a couple hours of her not letting up and not letting me off the hook, I finally told her what was going on. And she wouldn't leave me alone for the next 48 hours. And she had me call people that I needed to call, such as a sponsor and such as a therapist, and the people who needed to know what was going on. She had me call. And the recovery started. The recovery started from just being tired, y'all, and not being my authentic self and not fitting in. And so the recovery started, and I started calling a mentor of mine every morning on my way to work, and she would pray with me, because I know that God did not step away from me. I stepped away from God. And that relationship needed to be mended. And not only that, so I started working with her, praying with her every morning. I went back to therapy. I went back and got my butt into my recovery meetings again, because like I said, I hadn't lost my sobriety, but I was a little crazy. And I shared, gut level honest, regardless of how much sober time I had, regardless of what it looked like to other people. I didn't care. I was there to save my life because I knew I had a purpose. I just didn't quite know what that was yet. So I took the suggestions from my therapist and my mentors. I started really digging deep. I looked at the grief that needed to happen. I looked at the work that needed to be done. I changed my behavior again. I changed my routine. I did affirmations. I changed my morning routine. I showed up differently for me in my life. And I learned what self-worth and self-love really, really mean. Not just the love that I think I can have because you approve. Right? So I did that, and I did the work, and I dug deep. And it was incredible. Now, as a result of all of that, I also got to go on this incredible trip. It was a quick journey back to the Pacific Northwest, and actually got to go to a lot of the places that I grew up at. And I got to take that little girl with me. And I got to do the healing work. And about a month later, I was laying in bed because, life still happens even after you get through the rough stuff, right? So life happened. And I remember laying in bed, and God was like, "Guess what? You're going to move down to Florida to help your mama." And I was like, "No, I'm not. No, I really don't want to do that. I love my mama, but no, I don't want to do that." Because I had done the work, y'all. I had the home, I had the recovery, I had my life, and it was incredible, and I had my friends that loved me no matter what. And by the way, I didn't lose those recovery friends just because of what I went through. They were there with me every step of the way. So I moved down here, and I learned how to be a beach girl, and I enjoyed the peace and quiet, because y'all, this is peace and quiet compared to Atlanta, trust me. I know some of y'all are going, what? Wait a minute. No, this is peace and quiet compared to Atlanta. So I moved down here, and I enjoyed, and I moved in with my mom to help her through what she was going through at the time. And healing happened there. And I have to tell you, that was interesting because she and I had not lived in the same state for 30 years, never mind under the same roof. So you can imagine what that was like. And so we healed in ways that we never imagined that we would heal as two grown women who had gone through hell and back. And we got to share our stories and heal together. And that was incredible. So I bought a house here. I got a job. I got an incredible job that was a remote job that allowed me to go ahead and work a little bit on my spiritual journey on the side, because the intuition was not gone, y'all. That was still there, front and center, and I was learning how to work with it every day. And I was learning how to live with it every day. And I was learning how to use it to help others. And it was incredible. And one of my dreams that I'd always had was to actually do that full time. I was certified as a life coach 14 years ago. I was attuned as a Reiki master 15 years ago. I knew what I was supposed to be doing. But I always thought that I would have to wait until I retired for that to actually happen. And one day, unexpectedly, that fabulous remote job that gave me so much freedom ended in an unexpected company-wide layoff. And I tried to apply to other jobs, and my soul said, no, not this time. You are going to do your true calling full time for you. No more running, no more masking, no more hiding. And I did. And it has been one of the most exhilarating, most incredible, terrifying, fabulous experiences that I've had. And I am so excited about that. So as a result of doing that deep work and continuing to show up no matter what life threw at me, and taking a chance on me, I stand here as a woman who knows who she is, who loves who she is today, regardless of what anyone else thinks. I am an intuitive empath and a healer, and I know that. Now, an empath does not mean that I just identify with people and that I actually, recognize patterns, which, yes, I can do that having grown up in the home that I did. I understand all of that. I've studied psychology. But it also means that I walk into a room and I can feel the energy. I walk into a room and I can literally feel who's hurting. I can have a client in front of me and I can feel the pain and the joy and the happiness, whatever it is that they are feeling. I can feel when they're lying to me. I can wake up on any given morning and feel the dense energy of the world depending on what's happening in the world. It's intense, y'all. I also have the privilege of working with clients as an energy worker, and I can see in a body what's going on. I can see whether it's a physical ailment, past or present, or whether it has a spiritual or an emotional component to it. And I am so blessed to work with the people that I work with, to be able to help them along their journey. So even with all of the seriousness and the intensity of my gifts, though, I still love life today. And like I said, I know who I am today. I am a sober, goofy, geeky, nerdy, fun-loving, dance around the living room Chihuahua mama. And I show up authentically everywhere I go. not out of obligation, not out of people-pleasing, not out of worrying about what you are going to think of me, but I show up out of full and complete self-worth. I show up out of service to my fellows because that is my purpose today. And I'm so grateful for that. So I ask you to think about this. What gift that you were given when you were born are you hiding from this world? What magic have you not yet let the world see? And what is your reason for being here? Because I'm here to tell you, the world needs your gifts and your magic today more than it ever has. Thank you. Where am I going? Over there? Thank you.